All right, it's time for today's live stream. Of course, we've got to make sure that we're actually live on Rumble. So we'll get right to that. I do see that chat is working. Salty Badlands saying, Morning Clankers, we are Legion. Swagsit saying, Ree. Cam2425IA saying, Morning Clankville. And so on forth. We have lots of good shit to talk about. By the way, as a quick aside, the other day, almost twice as many people tuned into the Rumble live stream as to the YouTube live stream. So to those of you that are on Rumble, thank you very much for the outpouring of support. It helps when you're not algorithmically demoted. Remember that you can always share out the link to live streams and other content as well, because I always do an exclusive video every single day. It's only on Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, and Minds.com. And it doesn't actually go on YouTube. Usually it's spicier material. It's not allowed on YouTube. Used to be, broadcast yourself. Now it's go fuck yourself. So I do appreciate everyone that tunes in on YouTube. But keep in mind, of course, you aren't getting the full Clank experience if you're just watching me there. We've got a lot of news today. We've got the USAF leaks. Oh boy, is that a big one. One that's so big, it's being covered up by the legacy media. Of course, Medvedev over in Russia warning of the possibility of nuclear war. We'll analyze how realistic that is. We'll go through David Hogg and a few other things. Of course, with Kitty co-host here. I've always got to have that. Meow, meow, meow. Pet me. Feed me. Nicholas H. Hair looks very nice today. Thank you very much. I didn't wash it the other day. That's why. Showering every other day is the best thing you can do if you have long hair. Okay, I guess this is going to be the rest of the show is just us meowing at each other. We're having a normal one over here. She was hell this morning. She climbed up on top of the refrigerator, actually. She got up on the counter and made her way up. Then she was confused about how to get down, so I had to do some coaxing, of course. Yes, Tyler Morrison, David Hogg again. He's got even more crazy takes that we have to analyze from a reasonable perspective. The reasonable perspective with people like him at this point is just say, shut the fuck up. However, we can't always do that because there are people that are on the fence that are looking at their posts. And so remember, when you are debating a person, and this is important, I'll get into this before I get into the news. When you're debating someone, don't try to change the mind of the person that you're debating. Angle what you're saying to change the minds of those that are watching that don't already have a preconceived notion of who's right, because that's 90% of the people watching. Like if I show up and I debate some liberal, anyone that's showing up because that liberal showed up agrees with them. Anyone that shows up that's a clanker agrees with me. It's a foregone conclusion 99% of the time. But there will always be some people that are watching that really genuinely don't know where they stand. You're trying to convince them. You're not trying to convince your debate opponent. That's where a lot of people fall flat in debates. Now, they try to convince their opponent of the veracity of their arguments. It's never going to happen. They wouldn't show up for the debate unless they believed in what they were saying, or at least pretended to as part of a grift. That plays a role with David Hogg, by the way. So don't even bother. Try to woo the audience, the unbiased observer. Anyway, we'll get right into the news here. We're losing time here because of the cat and because of David Hogg, of all things. Anna Paulina Luna says her military records likely were leaked by the Air Force to dem firm as scandal grows. Quote, it's BS. Now, that's an understatement of the goddamn decade so far. Almost a dozen GOP lawmakers and candidates say they were impacted by the Air Force's unauthorized release of their military information. I talked about this morning, that this is a major scandal. We know it's a major scandal because it is being covered by the legacy media, but in their coverage of that actual scandal, they're pushing it to page 2, so to speak. This is from Fox, controlled opposition legacy media. So they'll put it on the front page for political clout to try to drain people away from actual independent, intelligent, and interesting commentary. If you look at CNN, NBC News, CBS, all the other major, the usual gang of idiots, where is the article? Go to their main pages right now. Be my guest. Go ahead and peruse. you're going to have to go to their politics section, and you're going to have to scroll way, way down to find any mention of this. That's because it is absolutely damning. They have to cover it because of how damning it is for plausible deniability, but they want as few people as possible to see their actual reporting because there is no defense for it. What happened is that the U.S. Air Force released confidential military records, including some that have to do with cases that could be in the future, that could be litigated. They have to do with being harassed by a supervisor, sexual assault, things of that nature, complaints of one kind or another. People's conduct when in the military, these are supposed to be confidential. They're not supposed to be accessible under most circumstances by any Johnny-come-lately. You're not supposed to be able to email the U.S. Air Force and say, hey, I would like Private Dickens over there. I would like his military records. I would like to see his disciplinary actions taken towards him and how he did on marksmanship and, the flight simulator and shit like that. You shouldn't be able to do that. But in this case, a group directly connected to the DCCC, which is the fundraising arm of the Democratic Party, prior in the lead up to the 22 election, they were given access to all of these records. The problem is that some of these members are standing in Congress as we speak. They were reelected and they're there. And so they're demanding answers as to how this happened. Now, I mean, the guess is pretty easy, which is that someone who is politically motivated within the U.S. Air Force and their records department decided to give this material out for political reasons. That will be the fall guy or fall gal of this particular scandal. The bigger scandal, though, is not the release of the records. In some case, it's nothing. It literally is meaningless. It's just, hey, this is how many push-ups they can do. This is how much they scored on marksmanship and stuff like that. It's very dry and boring. Was never used for hit pieces, although in a couple of cases it appears that the op research was actually used for political campaigning. That's very damning. The cover-up is what's really damning, which is how the legacy media is casting this story. They're not giving it any importance. It's on page B. You have to scroll way down to actually find it. That's the real scandal here. The scandal is that the legacy media is not doing its journalistic thing, which we've seen many times, but this is another example of them trying to sweep a major scandal, which I would compare to Watergate, actually, under the rug. No one to you. What the fuck is Garfield doing? No lasagna there. They're such picky eaters, they probably wouldn't eat lasagna. Like most cats, if you give them like a piece of the ricotta cheese from the lasagna, they'll eat it. You're eating fish sticks. You give them a couple of nibbles of the fish stick crumbs, they'll eat that. These guys, no. The only exception is that Farah will come up here if I have a fricandel or something like that. Of course, there's flaky breading around it. She'll eat that. Other than that, the only thing that they eat, they eat salmon crunchy, they eat salmon treats, and then they eat a handful of mushy foods. That's literally the entire palate that they have. It's very, very boring and very odd for cats. Normally, they go around the floor, they scoop up random shit. Widget, our fat orange tabby cat, when I was a kid, he used to scrounge up basically anything that was on the floor. He'd eat pieces of carrot, peas, pickles, pieces of noodle. Couldn't even stop him. He was like a friggin' vacuum cleaner. Midwest Finest 95. Hey, Sticks, what's the point of being in the Uniparty as GOP? Seems like a one-sided deal to me. Yeah, you get money and cocaine from the CIA. There are fringe benefits to selling out and being a member of the Uniparty. 3,000 people, by the way, watching live as we speak. So that's some good shit. We'll see how much we can pump those numbers up. Share out the link. I hate having to tell people to do that, but sometimes they forget to. Next news story. Russia's Medvedev says arms supplies to Kiev threaten global nuclear catastrophe. Yes, an open acknowledgement of the possibility of a nuclear conflagration as the result of NATO's actions in Ukraine. Now, base level analysis. What's the likelihood of a nuclear exchange between the United States and Russia or any other party in Russia and or China based on the United States arming Ukraine? It's very, very low. The problem is that the stakes were very, very low during even the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we came within one person making a decision on a Russian nuclear sub of having, literally midnight in the world. We've had this before. we came close to annihilation. This is probably part of why JFK was assassinated, in part by the Soviets. I do believe that. Reuters, Russia's former president and an ally of Vladimir Putin, said in remarks published on Monday that the continued arms supply to Kiev risks a global nuclear catastrophe, reiterating his threat of nuclear war over Ukraine. Now, of course, he's not currently capable of pressing the little red button, but the threat is there. It is a measurable threat. Even if you measure something and it's very, very little, you still have to claim that it is a measurable threat. Dmitry Medvedev's apocalyptic rhetoric has been seen as an attempt to deter the US-led NATO military alliance and Kiev's Western allies from getting even more involved in the year-old war that has dealt Moscow setbacks on the battlefield. I would say it's dealt everyone in the world a setback. It's a pile of shit. War tends to be a pile of shit. It doesn't matter who's in the right or in the wrong. Usually it's just a bunch of civilians that are suffering. Russian civilians, Ukrainian civilians, and of course, all of the people in the Western world who are being ignored while we continue to send more and more goddamn arms to the area. Who is John Galt? I'm as gay as a bag of giggles, and I love Donald J. Trump and you, Sticks. Not all gays are baptized in the poison of wokeness. No, most aren't. And by the way, Trump was on board with gay marriage back in the 2000s. He never gave a shit about the subject. I like it when people call him homophobic. Oh my God, these far-right maggots, they want to enslave gays or something like that. And I'm like, what are you smoking? We've got actual quotes of Donald Trump not caring about this issue particularly for a very, very long time prior to becoming the president of the United States. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Seems the first super chat disappeared. Hashtag Clank Nation. Did you send one before? Let me check. I don't think I saw one. Thank goodness it's early in the video so I can actually drag it through here and check. Yeah, I guess it disappeared. That wasn't my doing. That's something on YouTube's end. As usual, the Patriot Chiro, I support the current thing. The Defamation League, howdy Sticks. It's payday, which means it's time to shamelessly self-promote our music. Also, thanks for the follow back on Twitter. Hope you dig the music, at least what little we have released thus far. I'll be doing guest vocals someday. So yeah, we've got the possibility of nuclear war being openly spoken of. The fact that it's even being spoken of is itself a failure. I realize that there's like a 1 in a million chance of a nuclear war popping off in the next year. It's very, very infinitesimally small. But the fact that it's even being held as a possibility is something that should be concerning to everybody involved. Now, I mean, every Russian would die. Every American would die. All the Ukrainians would die. Pretty much everyone in the Northern Hemisphere would be glassed. And it would go beyond that, by the way. US and Russia get involved. China would get involved. The UK, France. India and Pakistan would probably pop off. North Korea would probably immediately attack South Korea. They'd get their shit shoved in probably after charging the DMZ, but they'd kill several million people in the process. Who benefits from such things? Ask yourself who benefits from war in general. It's a handful of people at the top anyway. Bunch of people who they actually deserve to be vaporized, usually. Filed my taxes yesterday, says the Clam Hammer. Unfortunately, I still owe Ukraine $4,782. Yeah, I wonder how much of the money I'll have to pay in taxes will go to Ukraine. Because at my income level, with the self-employment penalty, which shouldn't exist at all, by the way, I pay quite a bit in taxes. Unfortunately, my rate is massively higher than the average person who's in my particular economic echelon because of that 15% surcharge. Did you know this, by the way, for anyone that's not aware? If you're self-employed, if you're making income based on books, videos, and like Superchats, the stuff that I'm doing right now, that's self-employed income. You get penalized for the first 100 grand you make, 15%. If you make exactly 100 grand, the average person doesn't pay an enormous tax load on that. Yes, it's still onerous. It should still fall, but you can make ends meet. Not only do you pay that normal tax rate, you pay 15% above that, 15 grand over the year, just because you took initiative. You get penalized in the United States for taking initiative. Should be the inverse. It should be, if you want to have a self-employment penalty, it should be self-employed income above a certain level, not the first 100K. At the very least, you can graduate that shit or something. The Patriot Chiro, to catch up on today's news, just read 2-year-old conspiracy blogs. Clank. Yes, I know. Ozzy's Robots, is Russia a real threat to the liberal global order? No. All war, though, is a threat to the people involved, and in the nuclear era, potentially to humanity. I think it would be bad. I mean, I know. I like to play Fallout. I like shortwave radio and MREs and gas masks and military and all these things. A real, honest-to-goodness nuclear war would not look anything like a video game, and we need to understand that. It's good to LARP. It's good to have fun, and, you know, you've got crazy robots and ghouls and stuff like that. That's perfectly fine and in good fun. A real nuclear war would be a lot more messy. And most of the people that die would not die in the blast. You wouldn't die of radiation exposure. You'd die of cholera. You would literally shit yourself to death because of contaminated water supplies as infrastructure breaks down. You might stagger on for a couple of years, and then you would die. You would literally poop yourself to death. Wouldn't be the brave Americana death with apple pie and grandma's rocking chair that some people think of. Aaron, Medvedev notoriously speaks rashly about these things. Not to downplay the risk, but I thought that was worth pointing out. Exactly. The risk is very small. But there shouldn't be a risk. It shouldn't exist at all. We shouldn't be in this fucking situation. If diplomacy had prevailed, there wouldn't be a war there. But cooler heads didn't prevail. Well, that's not on me or some random Russian or Ukrainian citizen or you or any of us. That's on the governments that are involved. Muddy Drip 6665. It will be like Fallout, except the rest of the world would be fine. Only the major powers would bomb themselves out of existence. False. You want to know why? Because that cholera epidemic would kill off 99% of Africa, most of undeveloped Latin America and Asia. The radiation would go everywhere, especially in the northern hemisphere. But then you got to realize, and this is something people don't think about, in a globalized world economy, all of those lesser countries, too, only have the population density they have because of importation. They import crops to feed people. They import goods. They have investment from outside sources to run the factories to keep people employed, etc. When Rwanda ends up with a 70% unemployment rate and no food, what happens? It devolves back to the Stone Age, or the government collapses in an eternal military junta. That's what would happen to the rest of the world. I'd rather be in a developed country. At least if you're in an area outside of the nuclear crater, there's a possibility of surviving. Most people in the third world wouldn't survive either. SGT485. Hey, Sticks, first time commenting. Thanks for all your work. The stupid thing is people saying Putin is going to overrun Europe. Not possible. Yeah, he's not capable of that. Yeah, Ukraine's not a NATO member. If he were to invade Poland or something like that, NATO would actually take full-on action, and it would be justified because of an alliance. The Defamation League. Fact, Barney is a Gepedophile. He touched me inappropriately as a young one. Me 2 times up, no more purple dinosaur. Honest jerk. Hogg is a grease master like Vouch. Yeah, only he doesn't seem to have bulked up like Vouch did. Cold Summer 91. The Democrats should probably give up on the blue Texas dream because they are slowly but surely losing the Northeast. Good example is New Jersey. Yeah, and Maine, by the way, as well. The Copper Owl. I have a message from Stolas. Oh, Stixie, come home. I'm lonely. And when I'm lonely, I get hungry for your stuffed jalapenos. We can go to Lululand. I like Hell of a Boss. Thank you for the reference. Trash Panda. Feels like war became inevitable the moment Biden was selected. Yes, it did become. Just a second. Somebody's at the door, and it may be the neighbor for his mail. Sadly, it wasn't the neighbor to get his mail or the Rumble Award, which should be here literally any day. It was a little kid collecting bottles for some charitable work. I give him bottles, but I don't have any. It's like, Jesus, I'm not going to start drinking soda and getting cancer just to fund whatever you're looking for. So yeah. By the way, we are on Rumble Award watch at this time. Honest jerk, Vaush bulked up because he ate all the bread from the bread line. Yes, he was in search of bread and he found it. Far too much of it, it seems. Although he seems to have slimmed down lately. Just a casual look at his material. So, I mean, that's a good thing. That means that he can bless us with his hot takes for more years because he doesn't have fat slowly congealing in his arteries as much anymore. Yes, Amy in Connecticut, bread dead. Oh my God, breaded liners. That's a meme. That's an excellent linguistic kill shot. Somebody meme that shit up and send it to me on Twitter DM. The breaded liners. Have them in a fry vat or something, breading on them. Anyway, we'll try to get serious here. I know it's very difficult for me to do most of the time. Jesus Christ. We'll talk about David Hogg really briefly. He's not very relevant, but he's trying to cling to relevancy, and so you end up with things like this. This was David Hogg a few days ago, talking about his thoughts about the Second Amendment. You have no right to a gun. You are not a militia. When you're talking about your Second Amendment rights, you're talking about a state's right to have what is today called the National Guard. The modern interpretation of the Second Amendment is a ridiculous fraud pushed for decades by the gun lobby. Now, it's easy to point out how he's wrong. If you look at the original text and the framing in which the late 1700s linguistics apply to it, the militia is clearly not a military force. It's not a fully mustered force. It's a force rather able to be mustered. A guard member would be part of the militia, except when they're on active duty. Soldiers and active guard would actually be the ones that are precluded from this. The militia, rather, is the people at large able to be mustered in time of war. So they're not mustered. They're acting as civilians, but they can be mustered. In order to be well regulated, they need to be properly armed, properly supplied, and properly trained. They can train themselves. Most gun owners do. They understand their firearm or firearms. You look at Demolition Ranch, you don't want to fuck with them. Woe unto anyone who tries to break into their barn, for example. You imagine you go to Hickok's property. You're like, oh, shit, that's a nice car. I think I'll grab it. And then you realize whose car it is, and you just kill yourself because you're like, it'll probably be less painful than what I'm about to have to deal with. The fact is that the militia cannot include National Guard because the National Guard didn't exist when the Second Amendment existed. That's pretty much straightforward. Secondly, of course, we have opinions from the founders and from people adjacent to them, contemporary to that time period, not just in the Federalist Papers, but they're there as well, with regards to what the Second Amendment meant. It was pointed out by Washington and many others that the militia was the body of the people at large, able to be mustered. Even to the point where they said, yeah, it's perfectly fine with us, by the way, if they own ships and they load cannons onto them. That's perfectly fine. They can have their own cannons. Yeah, they can have muskets. Why can't they have whatever they want? The whole point was that they were manufacturing in many pieces elements of their own armaments. They made their own corned powder in many cases. They made their own musket balls in many cases. When they fanned out across the country, they had to maintain their own weapons. Those weren't government supplied. They weren't acting as a guard force or anything. And somebody really needs to drill it into David Hogg's small head, well, overly large forehead, but there's not much in there, about the Crookshank decision, because actually he's promoting Jim Crow when he promotes anti-gunnery. I would also find it funny, and I pointed this out as well, and I retweeted him with this, and some of his fans didn't find it funny. I wonder why. That the only person profiting off death is him, not gun companies. They're just selling a product. Most often it's used for peaceful purposes. He directly profits off the fact that some of his classmates were shot, and shame on him for doing so. He's a piece of shit. He's an ignorant moron. I think the average person understands that. And by the way, his original post got additional context added by the fact checkers at Twitter. I don't actually support doing that, by the way. I mean, it's an ignorant take. The fact check thing isn't going to work. It's sort of like what YouTube does on some videos. But I thought it was amusing. Ozzy's robots. The guy that tracked Musk's plane should track all the billionaire jets. If they suddenly flee to New Zealand, we know the nukes are ready to fly. It's not a bad warning system, actually. Viridian G, any thoughts on the Wuhan virus timeliness? Why now? Boiling the frog. They're revealing the truth to the public little by little by little with regards to various things we can't mention fully on YouTube still, sadly. And they're hoping to do it in such a way that people have their ire will get up when they realize they were lied to or misled in some way. But then it calms down because people have a low attention span. And then you release the next bit of truth that's inconvenient. The Grizzly. Did you Rainbow Dracula run from reporters in Ohio? Wow, what bad optics. I hope Trump takes this on as a platform issue. I also hope he blames Biden for the economy. I love watching the liberals squirm. Yes, Buttigieg did run from reporters in Ohio, or not run, but he fast walked away fairly quickly while his press secretary distracted them. It wasn't good optics. Everything about the response in East Palestine, even if you took seriously the Biden admin's proposal that it's not a major thing, don't worry too much, everything's fine, even then the optics are terrible. Is too unknown. Wish Biden would win the second term just to see where the USA will head to. Straight off a cliff. Peter is my first name. Does anyone know a source where woke ideology, both pro and con, is discussed or debated productively? Thanks. Great channel. I mean, there are debates on the topic, I suppose. I can't think of any pros to woke culture, though, so. Honest jerk, deep fried bread. Oh, yeah. I know deep fried pizza is a thing. I'm actually going to try making it sometime just as a goddamn joke. America Real. Can I get a Twitter shout out? At America Real 3. Thanks, bro. Clank on. Okay, there you've got a Twitter shout out on Twitter, America Real 3. Tyler Morrison, Hogg and Thunberg need to get laid. Hogberg. Yeah, imagine them dating. Holy shit. The Grizzly. Also, what do you think of banning guns on live streams? We know Google hates the Constitution, but is there a pragmatic reason for banning gun channels, etc., or is it just blatant censorship? That actually has, there is a kernel of realistic reason for that, and that's because people were killing themselves on live streams. Or they were displaying firearms and then negligently discharging them, shooting people, etc. Facebook, by the way, has this issue. So by instituting that rule, you can take the stream down faster so that if they do something crazy, you don't have legal culpability potentially. That being said, simply having a gun in the background should not be actionable. It's bullshit. There's no way to tell that it's a real gun and not just a prop anyway, but you're not allowed to have either. It goes too far, but there is actually, I have to say, I hate to stand for Google here, there is a legit reason why they instituted the rule. They were commanded to. The Patriot Chiro, David Hogg to release line of extra absorbent pillows for liberal tears to combat guns. He's going to have a maxi pad line, anal maxi pads for the incontinent. Batman, it's clanking time. Viridian G, any Sticks merch? Lol. Yeah, I had merch, but all of the merch managers that I worked with flaked out eventually. Yeah, I don't have merch at the moment. Eventually, it'll be back. I'll probably just stick to releasing some limited edition mugs and spoons or something like that. I'm not really into releasing a huge line like some people do. I'm not going to have like, and no offense, I'm not making this a pointed statement, but I personally don't want like a brand of coffee sort of thing. Because it's just coffee. I mean, there's a million of them available, kind of a saturated market. Mugs are good, though. I got a BitChute mug, although it's in the wash. And I had one of my own mugs, but unfortunately it got fucked. So I don't even have one of my own mugs to celebrate my old merch line. Tyler Morrison, why Meadow died, for facts about the Florida shooting. And on Rumble, we've got Metal Shred Freak. Does Cenk Uygur have a sweaty gun, or is Cenk himself the sweaty gun? Could it be both? Gunception? Politics is hard. And Article 1 defense. For your information, if you really get into Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, it specifically differentiates between the Army and militia. Refer to Crisane Hall on the topic. Yes, exactly. They are mutually exclusive. That's why under Post Comitatus, military members can't even carry their guns on military bases. I don't know that that's not going a little bit far, but they can't, except under certain circumstances. Is too unknown. What are the chances for Trump winning 2024? Reasonably high. Honest jerk. Will you be doing Pixel Planet stuff? At some point, yeah. I'm sure that I'll default back to trolling people on Pixel Planet at some point in the future. We've already taken over half of Africa, so, it's all good. Next news story, from outsider to incumbent under siege. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, aka Gollum, rocky road to re-election. Yes, mayoral candidates clockwise from top left. Brandon Johnson, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, center. Representative Jesus Shoy Garcia, Paul Vallas, and Willie Wilson. Yes, Lori Lightfoot may or may not actually be reelected mayor of Chicago, but I would like to point something out, and this is the only reason that I'm throwing it into the news stories today. It does not matter whether Gollum is reelected. She is insufferable, she's incompetent, she's corrupt, she's a liar, and a demagogue. She's a terrible candidate. By all rights, she should be in a jail cell, not in a mayoral office. What's the alternative? Because the only one there that is legitimately electable is Vallas. What exactly is he going to change? Is Chicago magically going to get better? Have less gun crime or less racist attacks or anything like that? Less corruption? Because you swap out one Democrat for the other? Oh, he happens to be a centrist Democrat. Bullshit. There's no such thing in Chicago. It's all machine politics. It's controlled by a mafia-like system. Nobody's going to win there unless they have the will of the criminals behind them, because Chicago is a city of criminals. Lori Lightfoot is there partially because of criminality, because of crime. If Vallas wins, it'll be because the criminals say, well, Lori Lightfoot is dead weight now. She doesn't sparkle anymore. She's endangering our capability of holding on to our machine politics power, so we're swapping her out for somebody else. We'll give her a golden parachute. It's been the same in Chicago now for what, 100 fucking years? You expect it to be cleaner? If I were in Chicago, and I never will be, I wouldn't bother to vote. I genuinely would not bother. It means nothing. Republican, Democrat, incumbent, challenger, it doesn't matter who you elect. They will be tainted by criminality. There's no hope for Chicago other than maybe in a nuclear war it gets completely glassed. But Lori Lightfoot being a shit fuck doesn't mean that the people running against her wouldn't be equally shitty. In order to have a chance, they have to suck the cock of the mafia, basically. The Defamation League. Hey, Sticks, here's an idea for merch, assuming they have staples in the netherworld. 11 by 17 posters. We got some high-quality glossy ones for cheap. Yeah. Not a banned account. Sticks, body pillows when? We need to wake up to you. Ironically, there would probably be people who would be into that shit. Some of them probably staple fleshlights to them, and that would disturb me. Hogg. The only white privilege which exists is people tend to assume whites get anything by their own merit, which is a creation of the left. Yeah, I wish that I had privilege. It'd be nice. The Defamation League. Sticks, have you ever heard the band Porcupine Tree? Yes, I have, actually. If not, check out their albums Deadwing and In Absentia. They'll be playing in your area in July. You should go. For Porcupine Tree? Yeah, that sounds fun. I don't like crowds, though. I don't like society. I like to keep it real on my own. Kicking back, relaxing. Sticks, are you okay with Superchats having vetted YouTube links to channels? I understand it could be problematic, but I'm not sure what YouTube is like versus Twitch. I don't know if you can link in Superchats. I've never sent one because I've never successfully figured out how. I'm fine with it. It's YouTube's rules. Next news story. The case for a primary challenge to Joe Biden. Now, you may be saying, well, it's because Joe Biden is old. Joe Biden is not widely perceived of as being re-electable. The Democratic lay people don't like him. The average person in the population disapproves of him, and he has absolutely no accomplishments to tout that aren't completely partisan. Yeah, if you're a Democrat, born and bred, you probably like the infrastructure bill. You probably like the Orange Man bad diatribe and removing lead pipes and all of these things. But if you're an independent, you don't have a partisan party, or if you're a Republican, you probably don't give a fucking goddamn shit about these things. I know myself, I don't. But the reason why they're proposing a primary challenge is basically, well, Biden has his issues. He's done a great job. We love Biden. He's done an excellent job. People aren't giving him enough credit. He's perfect, basically. He's full of vigor, but maybe he's just a little bit too old. The ass covering in this article is so goddamn sheer. Read it for yourself. Link in the description, archived, of course. The idea is Biden is perfect and wonderful, and of course, Orange Man bad, so Biden man good. But we should probably trot him out of office in order to get somebody else in. Yeah, That's what and then they talk about Challenger X, and they're talking about a bunch of morons like Whitmer. Yeah, Gretchen Whitmer would go really, really far in the 2024 election. Dean Phillips, who most people have never even heard of, and others. Cory Booker. Cory Booker tried already. He failed. He fell flat. Chris Murphy, Amy Klobuchar. Yeah, that'll go over well. The evil mom from Coraline is going to be the Democrats' candidate. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Gavin Newsom, Wes Moore. Wes Moore would be one of the more electable of them, by the way. It's just a list of tomfoolery when you think about it. Gretchen Whitmer, that'll go over so well. It'd be such a great time. The Democrats totally wouldn't get fucked in the ass. Top Jackomatic. Sticks, what advice would you give someone going through a breakup? Who cares? Don't worry about it too much. Sometimes things come to an end. Do something productive. Take up woodworking or something. Cook a new meal. You'll quickly find that the sadness passes. If you have any at all, of course. If it was messy, you may have just more anger. Metro762 sent $10. No comment. Thank you very much. Human Icebox sent $4.99 without a comment. Thank you as well. Not a banned account. Maxine Waters for president 2024. Racism will end. That would be so funny if she got a chance to run. The sad part is that there's no possibility of that. I would welcome a Maxine Waters primary challenge to Joe Biden. Can you goddamn imagine how funny it would be? The Grizzly, do you think that TDS is a unique thing? I kind of remember back when Bush was president. When I was in first grade, there were protest marches and all the same song and dance they did with Trump. Yeah, but Bush actually deserved it because he was starting several wars on credit. He was pissing away the economy. He was trying to violate the First and Fourth Amendment rights of citizens, creating free speech zones, trying to go through library records, banning shit on the radio, using Clear Channel as a workaround. Similar, by the way, to the Twitter files scandal that's more recent. He deserved it. He was genuinely a cretin. Donald Trump didn't do any of these things. There was no Bush derangement syndrome. There was Bush as an asshole and people recognize it syndrome. Next news story. Oh boy, is this a fun one. Tickets for Senator Sanders, that's Bernie Sanders, Bubba Bernie, from my home state of Vermont. It's okay to be angry about capitalism. That's the name of his new book. Book tour sell for $95. Publisher Penguin Random House describes the book as a progressive takedown of the uber capitalist status quo. Oh boy, don't I wish there were uber capitalism. I'd be way further ahead if there were. If government would get out of my way and it weren't constantly coercing, supposedly private tech firms to demote people's content, God, I'd probably have 2 million subscribers right now. Instead, I've only got 500,000 on YouTube. I feel pretty good about my position, but it would definitely be further ahead if it weren't for the political censorship going on. If only we had uber capitalism and there weren't people that are not in the upper echelon of society. So I don't make that magical 400K a year, sadly. I hope to someday. Then I can be abused even more. Why the hell should I pay a third of everything that I earn out to the fucking government between federal and state taxes? What the fuck are they even using it for? Why does the state of Vermont need a bunch of my money, by the way, too? They tax me thousands of dollars. For what? Your road system sucks. There's no infrastructure to invest in. You're spending it all on lawsuits, probably, with regards to trying to expand Amtrak access and regulations and shit like that. I find it funny. I don't have a problem with Bernie Sanders selling tickets to his book tour, to meet and greet Bernie Sanders. I don't care if he charges $1,000 for it. There are hipster liberals that would pay that too, just to get a selfie with Bernie, just to get him to sign their books. That's fine. That's perfectly. And by the way, the tickets start at $55, so you don't have to pay necessarily $95. $55 will get you the book, and maybe he'll sign it for you. And you say, "Oh, good job, Bernie." "Oh, thank you very much. I'll try to keep it up for a few more years because you're like 87 million years old or something like that." What I have a problem with is the hypocrisy. Your book is literally about how capitalism is bad, and I believe in socialism. But you're a multimillionaire, with 2 homes and a lake cabin, who's now charging almost $100 just to sit next to you briefly while you sign a book. That's not hypocrisy at all, is it, everyone? I like it when socialists are called out for this. Usually they're like, well, I still have to exist within the system. I just oppose the system. Well, the system seems to be doing pretty fucking goddamn good for him, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Is he suffering? Does he not have privilege of some sort? You know, the privilege to go out and fucking buy a Maserati in cash right now if he wants to? Dude's got several homes and the lake cabin. He's got a 6-figure Senate salary. He's now got a book. I'm sure that it'll make him millions of dollars. I don't begrudge him making a shit ton of money in the twilight of his life so that his kids and grandkids have a nice nest egg. I welcome that. It's nice for them. That's perfectly fine. He's a kind relative. But then he's peddling this system under which that would be impossible because no progress could be made by anyone who wasn't part of a political elite. And Bernie's so out to lunch, he doesn't even realize the liberals don't like you. The liberals fucking goddamn hate you because you say things like, well, in the last election, Fidel Castro had some good defining features and stuff like that. You're dead weight on the party. They only tolerate you because you're a draw for a bunch of brainless scumbag leftoid freakazoids, a bunch of stupid Zoomers and millennials that believe in your bullshit hyperbole. And so you end up voting for the Democratic Party because it promises totally this time, after the last 7 or 8 times, we'll finally get down to brass tacks and we'll do something that Bernie wants us to do other than renaming a post office. That's his career in a nutshell. When he dies, he'll be remembered for that. Bernie Sanders. I'm a man of the people. Well, the people that have 7 figures in their bank account. Definitely, you're a man of the people. Just not the average people. Fucking hypocrite. When you point this out to say, oh, but Bernie's so cute. He's like this cute little old man with his ice cream and stupid shit. Come on. Get off the fucking propaganda. It's like you're smoking crack. It ain't even from sleazy. Victoria Winter, the Dems should dig up FDR and run him for president. He would probably do better than Joe Biden. Probably be more communicative. Human Icebox, Elon is making a non-woke version of Chat GPT. Oh, excellent. Can't wait to try it out. I just wish that Elon would extend blue check marks to the Netherlands. They're in Germany. Why the fuck can't the Dutch get the blue check mark? Do I have to go over to Munster again for the day just to get the blue check mark or something? I don't even know at this point. It makes no sense. Mr. Wonderful, give Bernie a break. It costs to maintain 4 houses. Well, it's 2. He has 2 houses and then a lake cabin. The cabin kind of sort of counts. He's got lakeside property. He's not doing too badly. The Grizzly, I wasn't trying to defend Bush. I don't like him. My point is that the left just hates the right for no reason and will hate the opposition no matter what. Just like how they miss Bush. Well, Bush was never on the right. He was a big-time left authoritarian. He had big money policies, massive bloat of the federal government. He just decided to take out a bunch of debt and give people a measly stimulus to pretend that he was a conservative. The Defamation League, the evil mom from Caroline was a MILF. Changed my mind. She can sew buttons on my eyes any day. Have you seen a picture of Amy Klobuchar? Jesus. This is not the Bulimia channel. Top Jackomatic, I'm going to plant tomatoes. Excellent. It's a little bit early for me to be planting those. Hopefully we'll have moved to a place with more of a yard by that time, like May or something. I'd like to get back into gardening and garden big time. Kicking back, relaxing. Smokey762 is a based Chicagoan. Check him out. Yeah, the handful of based Chicagoans are like, it's why don't you move? Mr. Wonderful. Well, 4 homes after the latest grift. Yeah, maybe he'll buy another one. Buy another apartment in D.C. Metro 762. How can we trust a bunch of 18-year-old adults with voting when they don't even know what they are going to do with their lives or what gender they are? I have no problem with 18-year-olds voting as long as they can buy guns. I think that they should have to own a gun. Jim Morrison, Rumble, 2K viewers, bunch of not C. Adams refugees. More censorship equals more alternative clout. Yeah, I know. The Rumble's really doing it with regards to the live streams. Hello, everyone on Rumble, by the way. Salty bastard. Yes, we see you. Yes, Mikhail, you are indeed there. You are present. I'll do my Bernie Sanders impression just to impress you. Violence is life. I started knitting the Styx Hexenhammer plushie. Just make sure I get my cut if you sell it. Otherwise, you get sued. I'm just joking. I don't really give a fuck. Not a banned account. Walking backwards to avoid looking at women in the gym. Ozzy's Robots. Scott Adams walk back remarks. Apology tour next. It's just he's doing this for attention, and he's getting exactly what he wants. Shelly Babes. Sticks, what do you think the end game is for Ohio? I think that they very slowly take care of the contamination there, and they hope that it's not in the next couple of years that the cancer clusters begin showing up, because that would be politically inconvenient. Shane Cougar's Sweaty Gunt on Rumble. I'm sentient. And then the final news story, speaking about the Ohio train disaster. The right fans a repulsive campaign to racialize the Ohio train disaster. The fiery derailment of a freight train carrying hazardous chemicals in eastern Ohio is coming to represent bigger societal failures. It's a story about profit-driven rail companies investing in safety, lobbyists weakening rail regulation, and the government's failure to assure residents' security from lingering toxins. Well, one of those is true. Yeah, the Biden administration is failing to assure the residents that they're safe. The problem is that the profit-driven rail company is regulated currently by the Transport Secretary, Pete Buttigieg. The weakening of rail regulations so often pointed at has nothing to do with the prior administration, and those regulations that were rolled back were not addressed by the current administration for the course of 2 years. Not by Biden, not by Buttigieg. But in certain right-wing media precincts, the disaster is about something else, a campaign of discrimination being waged against white people. Here's where I stop. I'm not even going to bother going through the rest of the article. You can if you want, because it is racist. It is absolutely the case, and I deny anyone any latitude to argue otherwise. If you want to debate the subject, you can go ahead and debate it with somebody else. If this derailment had happened in a BIPOC community, in a county, specifically a Democratic one, the two do tend to overlap, by the way. If it happened on the outskirts, say in northern New Jersey, or in parts of New York, maybe California, I can guarantee it would not have been ignored for the first week. It would require an initial and immediate response by Biden. He would have gone there within a couple of days, and he would have sang Kumbaya with the people there and said, I know your pain, don't worry, we'll take care of it. Here's the FEMA funding for this disaster. It wouldn't have been withheld for a couple of weeks. There never would have been a Trump visit, not only because he wants to grandstand and he wouldn't be able to do that in Blue County, but because there'd be no reason for him to do so, because the Biden administration would have been there almost on day one. Buttigieg would have been sent there. He probably would have had a sleepover to look at trains, wink, wink. He would have had a good time of it. They would have gone to the community. They would have given them aid, and they wouldn't have withheld it initially. They would have cared, or at least they would have pretended to care because, it's a good photo op. Here's Biden with the construction workers and with the residents, and they're all crying and holding his hands and weeping at him like a fucking great emancipator statue or something like that. That's not what happened, though, is it? And there's a reason why. The people in this area, number one, they are not diverse. They are overwhelmingly white. So you can't get a photo op for BIPOC clout credit for the far left. They are working class, so they're not donor class. They're not rich people, so you don't have to care about them for that purpose. And they're MAGA voters. 70% of the people in that particular county voted for Donald Trump. I wonder why they were denied FEMA aid for several weeks. If a bunch of kids there get cancer, I'll tell you this, Joe Biden doesn't care. In fact, he probably considers that a beneficial thing. Yeah, there's definitely racism involved with analysis of the East Palestine disaster. It's not racism coming from the right wing or evil white supremacists, though. It's coming from the liberals. It's coming from articles like this that discount the fact that that is part of that narrative. But it clearly is. It clearly is. How many tweets? Can I please ask the people who made the article? How many tweets has Joe Biden put out? Or Kamala, especially, and to an extent others within the administration, about how climate change will disproportionately impact people of color? How many times have they put that out just on Twitter, just that one platform over the last couple of years, and in fact during the campaign as well? How many remarks do they make about East Palestine that don't boil down to Orange Man bad? Virtually nothing, and there's your disparity. By the way, please send no more super chats. I've got to get meatloaf ingredients together because tomorrow actually we have company. I'm going to be making meatloaf and buttery, fucking creamy mashed potatoes. The real good kind. Don't worry, I don't skimp on that. There's no instant mashed potatoes in this household. And probably Brussels sprouts. Yeah, I'm just going to boil them because Brussels sprouts are goddamn delicious. Not a banned account. Is contamination of red states a coincidence? Yes, the East Palestine disaster happening there, I don't think was pre-planned. I don't think it was sabotage or anything like that. I just think that the response to it has been goddamn abysmal. Ben Dover, Scott Adams said nothing wrong. He's still a boomer grifter. Yeah, I don't agree with everything Scott Adams says. He called me a dick before, and for about a month there, he had me blocked, although he has unblocked me, so he has been redeemed in the eyes of Clank officially. But no, I don't think that he's a racist. I think he likes getting attention, and I think he doesn't give a fuck about Dilbert being mass canceled across the whole world. Who cares? He's got tens of millions of dollars. You think he fucking gives a shit? Have you seen his goddamn house where he lives? It's almost a fucking block. It's like 5 regular houses in size. He doesn't give a fucking goddamn shit about being canceled. He's having a good time, and more power to him. The Grizzly. God, what a clown show. What an absolute circus tent. What is the response? It would be literally better for the news and Biden to shut up and not talk about it rather than this. I agree. I pointed that out earlier, actually. It would have been better if they hadn't done anything somehow. It would be better to be perceived of as being out of touch than to send Buttigieg there and people know that you're out of touch. Dark Jerry 92, you can't tell me what to do. Lol. Desiccated Corpse. When did leftists become warmongers? Around the same time that they abandoned environmentalism, as long as it was mainly impacting a bunch of right-wing MAGA hat wearers. Forge and Anvil on Rumble. Forge and Anvil got our first video takedown on YouTube this week. We are on Rumble too, but no one chats us on our Monday Night Lives on Rumble, but they do on YouTube. Any advice? Advertise your Rumble channel heavily on YouTube. That's what I've been doing for years. That's why I am where I am today. And branch out further. Get onto the new tech sites. Get onto Minds. Get onto Gab. Get onto BitChute, etc. Ozzy's Robots. Biden's advisors clearly wanted to send a message to East Palestine conservatives. We don't give a shit about you. Huge strategic blunder, but on purpose. Partially, I agree with you. Although we won't chalk up to malevolence what is easily explained by incompetence in this one particular case. Maxwell JW, it's undeniably suspicious, though, regarding the environmental scientist who all died on a single plane crash going to East Palestine. I agree, and there's a reason why most people have not even heard of that story. Been keeping that one under my hat for a little while now. I should probably go through it at some point. But yeah, I've got to make a meatloaf and a million. I'm making stir fry tonight. I've got the meat marinating already. Oh boy, is it going to be great, by the way. That meat was nice and tender, so I'm going to cook that shit up with a bunch of mushrooms and broccoli and everything else good in the world. Some nice rice. Liz doesn't like it seasoned like I do. I like to pump the rice full of fucking seasoning. And preferably then you sit it overnight, let it dry, and then fry it the next day. She prefers just plain white rice, but that's why you add the extra seasonings to the stir fry itself. That's about all. Peace out.